Today, we live in the era of the American empire, where the US wields outsized influence across the world. For decades, the US has enjoyed its leadership in culture, finance, technology, and of course, we can't forget the military-industrial complex. This empire started in the 1940s, after the Allies won World War II against Nazi Germany and the Axis powers. And in 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement set in motion a key victory for America. It established the US dollar as the global reserve currency. This privilege cannot be understated. It means that countries around the world covet the US dollar because it has been selected as the preferred medium of exchange for trade. This arrangement has led to the petrodollar system, where oil exporting countries sell oil for dollars. And it's enabled the US to weaponize the dollar when countries don't behave according to America's preferences. Through instituting economic sanctions, the US can cut off other countries from the global banking system, damaging their economies. Perhaps the greatest benefit is that the American government can easily borrow money from other countries. Over the years, America has borrowed and borrowed and borrowed, to the point where it now has a $30 trillion national debt, which averages to $240,000 per taxpayer. One of the major lenders to America is China. China has grown tremendously in the last 4 decades. After the brutal Cultural Revolution, China's new leader, Deng Xiaoping, led the country's transformation through his obsession with modernization and technology. It wasn't a completely smooth transition, but the government expanded rural income, encouraged experiments in creating businesses, reduced central planning, and established direct foreign investment. The Chinese Communist Party has invested extensively to achieve an innovation-oriented society. At one point, 39% of its university graduates obtained degrees in science and engineering. All of these moves have helped China become a global technological leader, boasting hardware production and software development of apps used by billions of users across the world. Meanwhile, China has established its own financial sector, tech hubs, and manufacturing powerhouses. While China has enjoyed annual GDP growth averaging over 9% over the last 40 years, America's average is 2.5%. While China's economy grew 2.3% in the middle of COVID in 2020, the US economy dropped 3.4%. Through all of this, America kept borrowing money. Today, China owns over $1 trillion of US public debt, which means America owes China a whole lot of money. Since 2011, China has been on a path of de-dollarization, where China is gradually shifting trade with other countries away from the US dollar and toward the Chinese yuan. In 2018, China issued its first long-term oil trading contracts denominated in petro-yuans, as opposed to the dominant petrodollars. Meanwhile, China and Russia have drastically cut their use of the dollar in bilateral trade, going from 90% in 2015 to below 50% in 2020. China is battling America for cultural, economic, and technological dominance, and its single-party government allows them to move swiftly in tackling a singular vision. When countries are steeped in mountains of debt, it gets harder to borrow more money, and instead, they resort to printing money. The US central bank has printed money exuberantly multiple times. In fact, 80% of US dollars in existence today were printed in the last 22 months. This repeated behavior does 2 things. First, it devalues the US dollar and erodes trust. The yuan to dollar exchange rate went from 8.7 yuan per dollar in 1995 to 6.3 in 2022. Second, it leads to rising inflation, which hurts the poorest and middle-class Americans the most. In 2022, US inflation hit a 40-year high at 7.9%. If this money printing continues, and it will, then foreign countries will begin to question why they're holding a currency that's declining in value. And if the US dollar loses its status as the global reserve currency, then Americans are going to be in for a shock when they can no longer sustain their current standard of living. This has led Ray Dalio, CEO of the world's largest hedge fund, to chart out America's decline next to China's rise. On March 9th, President Joe Biden signed an executive order for crypto. It was scant on details, and it highlighted a few key measures around protection and risk mitigation for consumers and U.S. interests. But it also had this key excerpt. The United States must maintain technological leadership in this rapidly growing space, supporting innovation while mitigating the risks. He calls for technological leadership, which we believe is not just a wish list item to hope for, but an absolute necessity for America. Here's why America needs crypto. First, when countries are in a downward spiral of overspending and borrowing, they need to claw their way out through innovation, production, or force. Crypto falls within the route of innovation. Crypto and Web3 technologies can be compared to the early days of the internet. Back then, US policies promoted technological advancements. This led to the rise of social media giants, search engines, e-commerce, online gaming, travel, the creator economy, ride-sharing, and computers in our pockets. Second, as the US dollar devalues, the world loses trust in its position as a global reserve currency. So if America can't control the global currency, the next best option is to become the most advanced and largest market participant in a global currency that no one controls. The US already has a strong foundation today as the leader in global Bitcoin mining, and more Americans own crypto than have savings accounts. American regulators can speed this up by incentivizing investors, businesses, and workers in the crypto space to live, work, and build businesses on American soil. In the meantime, China has been taking a different stance. Recently, the country cracked down on outspoken leaders of tech companies and dissidents in the more democratic Hong Kong. In 2021, China officially banned crypto trading and Bitcoin mining in favor of pushing its own centralized digital currency that will allow the government to control money supply and surveil its citizens' transactions. China has taken the route of more centralization and control, something the country's government is quite experienced in managing. Ultimately, we don't know who will come out on top and when, but we do know that America needs crypto for the sake of innovation and financial prosperity in this race between global powers.